Right, well, the last stragglers are caffeinating their minds. We'll get started so we can try and keep on time. So, again, thank you. Welcome again to the CAV Forum, and thank you very much for being here. And you now have the joy of my company for the next 45 minutes, and it's a topic that's very dear to my heart, that of lessons learned. And maybe it is because I was so well trained by the Australian Defence Department that has a number of challenges, as all organisations do. And so there was this impetus and this drive for the concept of lessons learned. All right, so let me start with a quick poll of people. So the first question is, so hands up those and say aye of anyone who has ever made a mistake. Come on, be honest. Aye. There's one or two of you, I can tell. And for those that didn't put up your hand, we know who you are. Next one, put up your hands and say aye. Whoever worked in an organisation that has experienced some form of breakdown or failure. Come on, there's one or two. Aye, aye, exactly. And last question, hands up and say aye, who have ever been in an organisation where the same mistake or failure has occurred more than once. Yes, indeed, yes, indeed. We all understand about organisational failure or process failures. All right. For those, most people know me, but for those who don't, I'm Rob Getreu, Principal Consultant at Armoured Consulting. Briefly, my background, I spent 20 years in manufacturing, R&D, education. Had my first startup in the 1990s when startups were not even that popular. I then moved into the Department of Defence, as I said, and for 10 years I was project director for the specialist vehicle program for the various arms of the Australian Defence Force. As a result of that, I was seconded to the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade in Canberra, where I was Assistant Director for Operational Security, with the focus being that of managing the civilian armoured vehicle fleet for DFAT and for many of the other Australian government bodies that operated domestically and overseas, the CAVs. And then in 2015, the theory says I retired. Well, that didn't really happen. Then started up Armoured Consulting together with Yoni Labadot, who's here somewhere, there he is, as principal partners in trying to bring independent technical knowledge and expertise to the CAV market. All right, so briefly what I want to try and do is cover the concept of mistakes when things go wrong and why they are actually very costly to an organisation. Look at some definitions and look at some background in the theories of lessons learned and processes, and introduce you to a couple of concepts, one of which being corporate neuroplasticity. I might actually take credit for that term, and we'll come back to that shortly. Then I'll let you dive into the issues of lessons learned methodology and how it applies organisationally, and particularly to the civilian armoured fleet market. Deal in four main themes or building blocks, which you'll all be familiar with, and they'll leave you with some key takeaways to be able to think about. But first, video.
Critical resonance reached, and boom, classic dynamic failure. Lucky guy dodged fate itself. Forklift jib wasn't rated for that beam. This was doomed before it even left the ground. Wrong pallet jack position from the start. Luck saved the day, not skill. Every unload starts with dock check. Miss that, and gravity's got your number. Look back at beauty, found pain in return. That's karma with a desk assist.
It was a bitter cold but sparkling clear morning at Cape Canaveral. Here at the last seconds of the countdown.
3, 2, 1, and liftoff. Liftoff of the 25th Space Shuttle mission, and it has cleared the tower.
All the communications between the shuttle and mission control indicated everything was going fine. There was a sense of relief that the much-delayed flight was finally underway.
Engines at 65%, 3 engines running normally, 3 good fuel cells, 3 good APUs. Engines throttling up, 3 engines now at 104%.
Challenger, go at throttle up.
It happened just over 1 minute into flight.
1 minute, 15 seconds. Velocity 2,900 feet per second. Altitude 9 nautical miles. Downrange distance 7 nautical miles.
From mission control, silence. Then the bland, chilling report.
We have a report from the flight dynamics officer that the vehicle has exploded. Flight director confirms that. We are looking at checking with the recovery forces to see what can be done at this point.
I have to say, the little baby, the toddler walking along, looking this way and running into the wall, that's the one I think every parent's seen and goes, ooh, that's going to hurt. So watch where you're walking. All right. So let me start by challenging you and go back to something that's been around since the dawn of time and consider the issue of change and change in corporate cultures. And that approach is to look to develop a culture of excellence rather than simply just doing what's always been done. Believe it or not, it's an idea. The idea of excellence has actually been around before AI. I know it's hard to believe. Back in 1980, Tom Peters and Robert Waterman wrote a book called In Search of Excellence, before many of you, I think, were around. And in this book, they challenged large organisations to create an environment that fosters the idea of doing excellent work rather than just bureaucratic work, busy work, if you like. It's a paradigm that's invaded some of our large institutions. So how do they define a culture of excellence? How do they define an organisation that embraced excellence in what they do rather than just doing it? What are the key attributes of an organisation that seeks excellence in what they do and the systems that feed into this culture of excellence? Well, to start, it's an organisation that values improvisation and thinking about what is being done rather than just forecasting a future of maybes and what ifs. Many of you have been challenged with a production forecast or a budget forecast or operational availability of your fleet. Now that's all fine, but a forecast doesn't actually lead to mission success. Adaptive systems, feedback mechanisms, improvisation, these have significant impacts that lead to optimal potential and mission success. may seem obvious, but a focus on what could be rather than why it can't be. Such a focus will, of course, give an organisation and its staff a better springboard to action and the results of excellence. The thought of what could be, a culture of innovation and new action, creates an exciting future. Focusing on old actions, what we've always done, simply keeps an organisation or a program or a fleet manager in a holding pattern that does not foster improvement. I suggest that a culture of excellence goes hand in hand with an attitude of improvement, wanting to do better with the resources that are available. It's been known for many years now that groupthink and keeping silent leads to poor decisions. The Cuban Missile Crisis of the early 1960s is a classic example of what can possibly go wrong if people simply go along with a dominant personality, the majority view, and are not provided with a safe space, as we say today, in order to speak their minds, to offer an alternative professional opinion. The organisation of excellence fosters and encourages people to speak out and to express different views. As police and security agencies keep reminding us, if you see something that doesn't look right, then tell somebody. It's on in the tube in London. It's just this constant message, and it's right. Importantly, senior management in large bureaucratic organisations need to foster an environment where expressing doubt and contrary opinions is acceptable. But of course, it needs to be based on professional views, backed up by solid theory and data. As an example, let's see that? Yes, you can. Lovely. As an example, the McKinsey Group developed the 7S framework as a means to help organisations foster excellence. This is a simple, broad-based and inclusive framework that encompasses the main hard and soft elements of every organisation. I won't go into the details of the framework, but I'd like to introduce you to the idea that excellence is driven from a balance of what's called hard systems and soft systems. Hard systems being strategy, structure and managerial processes. Soft systems are what are related basically to people and encompasses skills, staff, style and a shared vision. A key takeaway is appreciating that the benefits derived from a lessons learned system in your organisation in fact relate to the embracement of the broad aspects of what makes an excellent organisation. The two go hand in hand. In the progression from doing it, to harnessing hard and soft systems within your organisation can bring about real change, improvements in performance, cost efficiencies and effective missions. All right, so that's a bit of background and a bit of context. Let's actually come now and dive into a definition of what lessons learned is all about. In essence, it's a structured process of methodology that brings in the experiences and the analysis of causes, issues and events, and then facilitates a method of improvement for future activities. So as you can see, on the right side, the lessons learned methodology encompasses four major concepts. Firstly is analyse and reflection on events that have happened, seeing and understanding the reality on the ground, if you like. Next is innovation and improvement in systems that were integral to that event. The third is then implementing the changes to the systems, which should hopefully then lead to the prevention of the same mistakes in the future. And fourth is adapting and optimising the new improved systems to provide a basis for better performance. So what does this mean for civilian armoured vehicles and the fleets? Very simply, it makes for a safer fleet that's more cost efficient, that's not incurring the same mistakes over and over again, and at the same time preventing flow-on effects from those particular mistakes. Bottom line is that it's a win-win for the fleet of vehicles and for those stakeholders involved, including the procurement and the management of the vehicle fleet. In essence, the benefits of implementing a lessons learned system into civilian armoured vehicle fleets are reduced operational costs by avoiding repeated failures, enhanced safety for occupants and operators, improved fleet availability and reliability, stronger alignment with international standards and donor requirements, and data-driven decision-making across procurement and lifecycle management. Now I would like to introduce to you this concept called cognitive dissonance. This is a mental discomfort that we all experience when we hold two conflicting beliefs, or when our actions don't align with what we believe. In the civilian armoured vehicles sector, this concept is highly relevant, and I know this may come as a very big surprise, so brace yourself. When it comes to big organisations, no matter how big or small, what they believe and what they do are not necessarily the same thing. Surprise, I know. Take procurement decisions. Some organisations claim that safety is their highest priority, and yet they choose the lowest cost armoured vehicle that falls short of recognised international standards of protection. Their belief says safety first, but their action says budget first. That gap, that discomfort, is cognitive dissonance. We also see it in fleet management. Fleet managers know that proper maintenance keeps vehicles reliable and safe, but faced with tight budgets, inspections get delayed or skipped altogether. Again, the belief conflicts with the behaviour. And finally, in operations, NGOs and government missions may operate in high-risk areas with vehicles that are outdated or poorly supported, insisting that they prioritise staff safety, yet they use assets that cannot realistically withstand common security threats. The cost of this dissonance is significant: reduced safety margins, reputational damage, and long-term financial loss. It's the lessons learned methodology that bridges this gap. It helps organisations align their beliefs, such as safety, operational readiness, with their actions by embedding evidence-based decision-making, consistent maintenance strategies, and transparent procurement practices. Ultimately, reducing this cognitive dissonance is about integrity between what we say and what we do. In the CAV world, that alignment saves lives, protects investments, and strengthens organisational credibility. Now let me introduce you to this concept of corporate neuroplasticity. Glad it's written up there, because if you asked me how to spell it, I'd probably struggle a little bit. But it's the idea that organisations, much like human beings and our brains, can adapt, evolve and strengthen through exposure to the right inputs. Starts with awareness, recognising that change is both possible and necessary. In humans, the brain actually rewires itself through messages, experiences and chemical signals that either strengthen or weaken neural pathways. It's how we learn to walk, we learn new languages, and we master new skills. I contend that the same principle applies to corporations. Organisational growth happens when the right information flows through structured conduits. Things like defined processes, analytical tools, feedback systems, and consistent behaviours. These act as corporate equivalents of neural pathways, reinforcing what works and extinguishing what doesn't. A lessons learned system is one of those particular conduits. It senses issues, it interprets them, rewires improvements directly into daily operations. Over time, this creates a more adaptive, efficient and resilient organisation, one that embraces excellence in all that it does. In essence, corporate neuroplasticity isn't just a metaphor, it's a framework for continuous learning. The more an organisation engages with its own feedback loops, the stronger, smarter and more capable it becomes. So, it's a lessons learned methodology that transforms experience into new performance. It ensures that every incident, success or challenge directly contributes to safer, more efficient and cost-effective operations, which is absolutely essential for the civilian armoured vehicle sector. There are 5 key components that make this system work. First is collection. Start by systematically capturing information, incidents, near misses, maintenance, data, driver feedback, and field reports. Every piece of information matters. It builds an operational picture. Next thing then is analysis. Go beyond the surface symptoms to find the real causes, whether they're technical, human, or organisational. And from that, understand both the impact and the risk. It's evidence that guides decisions. Next is dissemination, sharing what's been learned. Insights must reach everybody, from the procurement office to the country manager, to the fleet manager, to the drivers, so that each of these stakeholders understands what's happened, why, and how to prevent recurrence. Next is application. Turning lessons into tangible change, feeding them into specifications, standard operating procedures, training, contracts, KPIs. This is where learning becomes part of a system. Next then is feedback loops, monitoring adoption and measuring outcomes. Lessons learned isn't a single event, it's a continuous cycle that keeps refining performance. So in short, collection, analysis, dissemination, application and feedback form a closed loop of improvement and excellence. When embedded correctly, lessons learned turn isolated experiences into institutional knowledge. And that's what drives real, measurable progress. And yes, excellence. All right, so that's all great in theory. How do we actually now apply it to civilian armoured vehicle fleets? I'm going to take you through the 4 key themes, the 4 main building blocks that's part of a CAV program, if you like. The first of them is capability design, and this defines how a civilian armoured vehicle's protection, mobility and usability are all shaped to match threats, terrains and missions. The objective is clear. A procurement agency should work to have every specification evidence-based, operator-centred and continuously informed through lessons learned. It starts with threat assessment and risk modelling, setting the right ballistic and blast protection levels in line with recognised standards such as the VPAM, BRV and ERV. Then mobility and performance systems, suspension, brakes, tyres. These must all be modified to manage the additional armour weight while maintaining control and safety. But even technically sound vehicles can fail if they ignore the human factors and ergonomics. Operator visibility, communication, the height of the ceiling for a 6'2" person with a helmet, and usability all directly affect sustainability and survivability of the occupants. Similarly, weight and payload management determine how well the vehicle performs in dynamic field conditions. Here's where lessons learned system becomes essential. It's a system that transforms field experience into design intelligence. That's not artificial. Real-world feedback ensures specifications remain relevant to evolving threats. As an example, drones. Operational data informs better armour, glazing, braking and tyre integration. User insights improve ergonomics and situational awareness. Iterative updates prevent stagnation and extend the design life of the platform. And transparent requirements simplify verification and acceptance. Without a lessons learned framework, the opposite occurs. Legacy weaknesses resurface. Vehicles remain vulnerable to known threats. Negative performance issues repeat across generations of the platform. With an integrated and methodical lessons learned system, every new platform becomes smarter, safer, and more cost effective because the lessons are not just recorded, they're engineered into the next design cycle. That's the power of structured learning in capability design. The next building block is that of procurement, and this is where operational needs are transformed into commercial outcomes. Selecting capable suppliers, defining measurable requirements rather than just, I want upgraded brakes, and managing both value and risk. For civilian armoured vehicles, this phase defines not just cost, but capability and safety. It begins with the requirements definition and technical specification, clearly articulating what the vehicle must do, must be capable of doing, and in what conditions. Then comes supply due diligence, ensuring that vendors have the experience, certification, and facilities to deliver compliant products, buying what you want them to deliver rather than you buying what they want to deliver. Next is tender evaluation and the scoring systems that ensure fair and transparent selection. Decisions must be auditable and based upon performance, evidence, and not just perception. Contracting and warranties then lock in service levels, quality controls, training deliverables, and penalties for non-performance. Finally, all of these must align with regulatory and donor compliance, thereby maintaining transparency and accountability, both financial and operational. A robust lesson-learned system transforms procurement from transactional to strategic. Evaluation criteria evolve from past successes and failures, ensuring a stronger supplier fit. Transparent scoring reduces bias and strengthens confidence across all the stakeholders. Contracts embed quality assurance, root cause analysis, and training deliverables informed by prior experiences. And risk registers are proactive and anticipate issues before they escalate into disaster. Without a lessons learned framework, procurements repeat past mistakes, poor supplier selection, hidden costs, weak contracts, and unmanaged risks. These all result in cost overruns, disputes, been there, done that, loss of trust, and diminished reputations. With a structured and methodical lessons learned system, each new procurement cycle becomes sharper and more efficient, delivering better vehicles, stronger partnerships, and measurable value for money. The third building block is production management and oversight, which ensures that vehicles delivered truly match the design intent, technically, structurally, and operationally. In the civilian armoured vehicle sector, this means rigorous quality assurance, material traceability, weld integrity, we're going to hear more about that shortly, and a thorough pre-delivery verification process. We'll also hear more about that later on this morning. It starts with weld processes, procedures and qualifications, ensuring certified welders, processes, welding plans, non-destructive testing. Regular audits confirm that every weld can withstand the ballistic and blast forces as per the specification and requirements. Material and transparent armour traceability guarantee that certified, compliant material is used, not substituted, undocumented, or below standard materials. In-process inspections and control plans monitor production step by step, catching deviations early before they cascade into costly rework, supplier delays, and impacts on operational availability. Then there's the PDI, the pre-delivery inspection, that validates every functional and safety system before the vehicle leaves the factory. Out in the field, it's too late to find a mistake. It's much more costly and timed in order to rectify the mistakes. It needs to happen at the, at the factory. Finally, root cause corrective action mechanisms close the loop, transforming each defect or deviation into a learning opportunity. A structured lessons learned system elevates production oversight from inspection to prevention. Known weld or assembly weaknesses are designed out before they reappear. PDI checklists evolve continuously, reducing latent faults in the field. Supplier KPI and quality assurance reports incorporate lessons to drive accountability. Continuous quality monitoring minimises life cycle failures and costly recalls. And clear acceptance criteria streamline delivery and reduce rework. Without a lessons learned system, production remains reactive. Structural issues resurface. Undetected faults compromise safety, and warranty disputes consume hard-earned and limited resources. With a structured and methodical lessons learned system, production becomes predictive. Issues are identified, traced, and engineered out early in the process. This results in a vehicle that not only meets the specification, but maintains integrity and reliability under threat. A direct outcome that learning is built into every weld, every joint, and every inspection. The fourth building block is through life support. It's about maintaining availability, safety, and value across a vehicle's entire operational life. For civilian armoured fleets, it's where long-term reliability and cost efficiency is either won or lost. It starts with preventative and predictive maintenance regimes that move beyond reacting to failures instead of anticipating them through data trends and performance analysis. Spare parts forecasting and inventory control ensure critical components are available when needed by clear supplier service level agreements and traceable quality records. Close to my heart, technical publications and configuration management control keep all documents timely, up-to-date and accurate, while workshop capability and accreditation ensure that only qualified technicians work on mission-critical systems with the right tools and the right diagnostics. And finally, availability, mean time between failure, mean time to repair, analytics track fleet health in real time, turning maintenance into a measurable science rather than, yeah, that sounds about right, guesswork. A structured lesson learned system is what ties all this together. Maintenance schedules evolve based on real failure data, not just assumptions. Predictive analytics cut down time in the workshop and downtime and reduces the total cost of ownership. Spare parts strategies are refined to avoid operational downtime due to no spare parts. Life cycle planning becomes proactive, extending the vehicle's useful life and saving on capital budgets, which are hard to come by these days. And operational availability improves and safety incidences decline. Without a lessons learned system, the opposite happens. Recurring faults shorten vehicle life, repairs are delayed, and costs spiral as fleets become unreliable. With a structured and methodical lessons learned system, through-life support becomes a strategic enabler, data-driven, preventative, and resilient. Every hour of operation actually reinforces the system's intelligence, ensuring safer missions, better value, and sustained fleet confidence over time. The final building block is that of training, and this is the human bridge, the soft systems, if you like, between vehicle capability and operational reality. It ensures that drivers, fleet managers, maintainers, and procurement specialists apply best practice based upon real incidents and data, not just folklore and habit. We've had these specifications for 10 years, they've worked well, we're just going to cut and paste, she'll be right, mate. Those days are long gone. Effective programs begin with scenario-based driver training, and we'll learn more about that later on in our forum. Simulating real threats and stress conditions to build instinctive and safer responses. Fleet management training strengthens planning, budgeting and reporting skills, ensuring that decisions are informed and accountable. Maintainer training, something that really doesn't have nearly enough focus out there in the real world, focuses on diagnostics, torque settings, repair qualities, for example, because precision directly affects vehicle survivability. And as someone who's seen wheels fall off a vehicle whilst it's in motion, there's lessons to be learned. This is not the way to have a vehicle. Critically, modern training also relies upon lessons learned databases, integrating real case studies, field failures, and maintenance insights fed back into the curriculum of the training programs. Regular rectification and refresher courses ensure that training evolves as threats and technologies change and as people change. A structured lessons learned system amplifies the value of training. Real-world incidents data shapes scenarios that prevent repeated mistakes. Refresher courses reflect emerging risks and equipment updates. Drivers develop stronger judgments and convoy discipline under the stress of operations. Reduce misuse of vehicles, reduces wear and tear, and repair costs and downtime. Excuse me. Confidence and morale rises, especially in high-risk environments. Without lessons learned, training stagnates, old habits persist, risky behaviours repeat, and crash rates climb. And Daniel, I'm sure, is going to cover this in his presentation later in the forum too. With a structured and methodical lessons learned system, every lesson becomes a tool for prevention. Personnel act with clarity, discipline and purpose, translating organisational learning into safer travel, stronger fleets and smarter missions. Okay, so that's all great. Everyone understands the concept, and yet it fails. There is no end of stories of how organisations fail in the way that they implement. And so to understand the failures, we need to first look at the critical successes of implementing a lessons learned system. And I would contend that there are 5 critical factors that we as an industry need to focus on in order to successfully implement a lessons learned system. First is leadership support. Senior management must visibly champion the system. They need to provide resources, authority, accountability, and yes, I'm sorry to say, for those in responsible positions, you've got to put Your dollar's on the table. You've got to allocate some budget. When the leaders set the tone, lessons learned become a shared priority rather than just a side project to keep somebody happy. Secondly is clear ownership. Every stage, from capturing and analysing lessons to approving and implementing them, must have named and accountable oversight. Without ownership, good insights fade before they translate into real action. Third is integrating the lessons into core processes. They must be woven into daily operations, design reviews, tender evaluations, production inspections, maintenance and training cycles. It can't sit in isolation. It has to drive real decisions. Fourthly is accessible tools and systems. Every one of us has been in an organisation, you were given a tool by management and they said, away you go, implement it. And it either doesn't make sense or it's all too hard or it doesn't work because no one's actually thought through the process. People have to find that the systems are easy to contribute and to retrieve the knowledge. Simple capture templates, search capabilities, has this mistake happened before? And intuitive dashboards make participation natural rather than burdensome. And finally, this is the tough one, is a culture of improvement. A non-punitive environment encourages honesty. If your organisation does not actually embrace someone going, that's not right, or I don't think that that's the case, and know that they can say that safely without threat of retribution from a domineering management team or manager or president of the United States, as was the case in the Cuban Missile Crisis. When staff are recognised and rewarded for identifying risks or sharing mistakes, the organisation grows collectively stronger. And in fact, this is the number one key aspect why airline safety has improved dramatically over the last 30 years, is because pilots are encouraged to report failures and mistakes through the cockpit and through maintenance, rather than hiding it so, no one will know. And if a mistake is found and a pilot knew about it and did not, co-pilot engineer, and did not report it, they are in a mountain of hurt. But if they are actually rewarded for reporting the failures so that rectification can happen. I would contend that in most of our organisations, that's not it. And we need to take maybe a leaf out of the safety of the airline industry. When these 5 factors align, lessons learned become a living system, continuously sensing, learning and adapting. Without them, they remain a document or a database or an Excel spreadsheet that's sitting on the shelf, not the spreadsheet, but the document does. And full insight is empty of impact. With this insight and with these key factors, lessons learned becomes a powerful engine for safety, efficiency, and organisational maturity. But as I said before, it's hard. The concept is right, the theory is right, everyone understands, everyone wants an improved and an excellent culture within an organisation, but it tends to fail. What's important is to understand why it fails and then how it then directly relates to those critical success factors that I just mentioned. So understanding why the system fails because of the cost of failure is no longer abstract. It's actually measured. Failure is measured by virtue of wasted budgets, which are hard to come by, repeated mistakes, and in some cases, lives. And like I'm sure other countries out there in Australia, there's a coroner who investigates, unfortunately, deaths to understand why did it occur and what can be done to avoid it in the future. This is one of the key issues. So the first and most common reason for failure is the lack of leadership commitment. Without executive sponsorship and resourcing, even the best system will fail. When leaders treat lessons learned as optional, improvement becomes reactive. And generally, that's only after a loss or a failure. Management typically, when the you-know-what hits the fan, that's when they react and say, ooh, what do we have to change? Too late. Next is poor integration. Too often lessons are documented but never embedded into specifications, contracts, or maintenance plans. They sit on the shelf, disconnected from the process that actually shapes real decisions. We've seen it all before. It's a system in name only and not in practice. And then the big one, they're always saying it, inadequate data collection. It's too hard to collect the data. The people aren't cooperating. I don't know how to do it. I'm too busy. When reporting is incomplete or inconsistent, analysis just becomes guesswork. Gaps in data means gaps in safety, reliability, and accountability. The absence of a feedback loop compounds the problem. Lessons must be written down, and if no one verifies that they're adopted and implemented, then their impact fades into irrelevance. Next is cultural resistance, another big one. It's a silent killer. Fear of blame, as I just mentioned, or reputational damage. We can't admit that there was a failure in our fleet because, gosh, what would they say in London, Washington, New York, Canberra? Oh, no, we won't tell them about that. And so it discourages staff from speaking up. Problems are hidden rather than solved. And those hidden issues eventually resurface at a far greater cost. And finally, another big one for the reasons of failure is financial constraints. Under short-term pressure, what we're seeing these days in the diplomatic and NGO world, the short-term pressure, and so improvement work is postponed. The irony is that what's deferred today becomes tomorrow's breakdown, or delay, or financial, or God forbid, human loss. The ultimate cost of these failures is immense. Recurring incidents, high maintenance costs, reputational damage, which we forget about many times, and diminished trust from partners and donors. When organisations fail to implement lessons learned effectively, they don't just lose knowledge, they lose resilience, credibility, and competitive edge. Okay, key takeaways. All that was great. This is the time to put the phones down and actually take in for one more moment. So as I close, these are the critical takeaways that capture what I believe and is needed to make a lessons learned system work, not in theory, but in practice. Again, firstly, staff commitment and management buy-in. No system succeeds without people. Leadership sets the tone, but it's the collective police, that learning matters. And it transforms policy, wait for it, into habit. When every person owns improvement, progress becomes unstoppable. They say in occupational health and safety, I did that many training courses, and they say, who's responsible for occupational health and safety in the workforce? Everybody. So who's responsible for the implementation, the use of lessons learned? Everybody. Secondly is dedicated resources. Lessons learned cannot run on goodwill alone. It requires trained staff, time, tools, money. Not a lot of money, but a little bit of money. People who are accountable for both maintaining the system and ensure that the actions are actually acted upon. Third is a systematic bottom-up approach. The most effective systems grow from within, when people closest to the vehicles, the workshops, the field, the drivers, they contribute insights, and that their learning filters up through the organisations, become real, practical and credible lessons implemented across the board. Fourth is start simple and then mature. Don't wait for the perfect model. It's never going to happen. And it becomes too big a problem, and so we'll delay it and we'll talk about it at the next committee meeting in the next quarter. Begin with a basic data and analysis model, and you can then build momentum and expand as the system embeds itself into operations. Maturity comes through use, not design. And finally, timing. Believe it or not, but about 2,000 years ago, some very wise sages, who didn't earn a wage, I know, wrote a book called Ethics of the Fathers. And while President Obama may have made it famous and said it, he actually didn't write it. And one of their paradigms in the Ethics of the Fathers is, when is the right time? If not now, when? If not me, who? That's the essence of organisational learning. The time to act is always now. The responsibility rests with each of us. With commitment, structure, and when they align with action, lessons learned stops being a process and it becomes a culture. And that's when true resilience begins. So let me wrap up, and I think this image captures the essence of the lessons learned journey that I've taken you through. How raw experience becomes real, meaningful change. Starts on the top left with data, isolated dots of information. On their own, they really don't tell us anything. When we begin to connect the dots, pardon the phrase, we form information, and information patterns start to appear. With structure and context, information then becomes knowledge, when we understand not just what happened, but why it happened. And from knowledge, we derive insight, recognising relationships and implications that drive better decision and the future of the organisation. With repeated application of these insights, we then develop wisdom, which is embedded understanding that guides consistent, confident action. And finally, when wisdom is applied systematically, it creates an impact. Measurable improvement, safer operations, stronger performance, and a culture that learns and evolves. That's the journey of every successful lessons learned system, transforming scattered data points into enduring impact, from observation to understanding to real-world change. Thank you.